Welcome to the program. Reminder that we're live also on all our social media platforms at 3FM 927. You can join us there as we get interactive and share your thoughts with the rest of the world. Let's settle for the details. The joy of freedom eluded former Buffer stock boss ABDUL Hanan WAHAB and his wife FAIZA WUNI at the High Court this morning, shortly after the Attorney General announced in open court it had effectively discontinued all charges against the couple in a case of stealing, money laundering, defrauding by false pretense, among other charges. The Economic and Organized Crime Office, EOCO, in a dramatic fashion, rearrested the couple even before they could leave the court premises. It remains unknown whether there would be fresh charges proffered against them or they would be brought back on the same charges. But my colleague, Deborah Abba-Mensah, followed the development in court and she's joining us with the details. Deborah, good to have you. How did the couple react first to the discharge and then the rearrest?
Okay, so I would say they were not surprised because earlier in court, after the Deputy Attorney General had made that submission that he is withdrawing all the charges against them, their counsel, which is the former Attorney General Godfred Dami, also made a submission that he was hoping that it wouldn't be the case that they would be rearrested. So I would say they already had that mindset, so they were not really surprised.
I see. How about the discharge? How did they react to the discharge initially?
Okay, so most of them, as I said earlier, they didn't look surprised, but they were also not happy about the whole situation with the rearrest. But the discharge, their counsel, which is the former Attorney General,
and Deborah, if you could reposition yourself, I'll be grateful. I'm struggling to hear you. But my next question to you will be that, has the Attorney General given any reasons for discontinuing the case against WAHAB and his wife?
Can you hear me?
Hello, Deborah.
Can you hear me?
We'll try and reconnect with Deborah Abba-Mensah. She's my colleague who was in court today, witnessed the proceedings. So she joins us again to throw more light on the happenings in court today. But let's take a listen to Godfred Dami. He is the former Attorney General and a lawyer to the former Buffer Stock CEO, ABDUL Hanan WAHAB, and his wife. This is what he had to say after everything that happened in court today.
There before, we didn't see this level of incompetence as we are seeing. And clearly, what is unfolding is a manifestation of the ineptitude of the prosecution. I mean, it's a matter that the Attorney General over a year ago made noise about, called it what, Rambo in the jungle. And he has evidence, is ready to prosecute, and in no time to be convicted. And as we started raising objections last 2 weeks, we've seen what is happening, witnesses being struck out and all that. But we're completely not ready to undertake the prosecution. The evidence was bereft of any basis at all to lay a charge of stealing or money laundering against the accused persons. And so it was so clear that either they discontinued or ultimately the accused persons will be acquitted. And then last week, they reported to smuggle in witness statements without leave of the court. Even after they had concluded the case conference and the prosecution, properly so-called, the trial was about to commence. And we raised objections as to the propriety of it. The court had prepared objections and struck out the witness statements. So they were stuck. They didn't know what to do. And today, they reported to undertake this drama by withdrawing all the charges and then right after we are arresting them. To commence investigations again, nobody knows. It's a gross abuse of prosecutorial discretion. I've never seen its kind in the jurisdiction before. If you want to take prosecution, you have to conduct proper painstaking investigations before banding innocent citizens to the land.
That's the voice of former Attorney General Godfred Iyabwa Damide. There's a story. We're keeping an eye on bringing you details in our subsequent bulletins. Let's now cross over to Parliament now, where the majority in Parliament has called the bluff of the minority, describing the around over the Bank of Ghana 2025 losses as lacking any grip because the central bank made huge losses under the past administration, while justifying the losses as the outcome of deliberate policy interventions which have eased inflation and then boosted investor confidence as well as stabilizing the city. Chairman of the Economy and Development Committee says the Bank of Ghana lost over 80 billion cedis between 2022 and 2024. Let's cross over to Parliament, where the majority is now addressing the media over the recent happenings at the Bank of Ghana and reactions from the minority.
By fiscal year, and other comprehensive income, charge of 19.32 billion, a negative equity position of 96.3 billion. While these figures are significant, necessary, they must not be interpreted through a narrow lens of commercial banking. I repeat, while these figures are significant, they must not be interpreted through the narrow lens of commercial banking. Central banking is fundamentally a public policy function, and its financial outcomes often reflect the cost of stabilizing the economy. To be fully appreciated the 2025 results, one must consider the recent historical context between 2022 to 2024. The Bank of Ghana recorded cumulative losses of approximately 80.85 billion Ghana cedis. That is where I want the press to lay more emphasis on. To fully appreciate the 2025 results, one must consider the recent historical context. Between 2022-2024, the Bank of Ghana recorded cumulative losses of approximately 80.85 billion Ghana cedis in the era of the MPP. For instance, in 2022, the Bank of Ghana incurred a loss of 60.81 billion Ghana cedis, 10.55 billion in 2023, and in 2024, 9.49 billion Ghana cedis. This period coincided with one of the most severe macroeconomic crises in Ghana. Inflation, listen to me now, inflation surged at a peak of 54.13% in 2022, before declining to 23.84% by the end of 2024. The Ghana cedi experienced significant depreciation, reaching approximately 17 cedis to $1 by December 2024, representing a depreciation of about 19.7%. Gross national reserves stood at about $9.3 billion in 2024, covering 4 months of import cover of goods and services. At the same time, the bank's equity position weakened, recording negative 64.34 billion Ghana cedis in 2023, improved slightly to a negative 61 billion in 2024. Given this consideration, my friends, the 2025 financial outcome must be understood as the continuation of a deliberate and necessary policy intervention. I want to lay more emphasis here. Given this consideration, the 2025 financial outcomes must be understood as the continuation of a deliberate and necessary policy intervention. In 2025, the bank's balance sheet reflected a debt position of 96 billion, right? However, macroeconomic indicators show a strong and decisive turnaround. Inflation declined sharply to 5.2%, but
we'll stay on this subject. We'll speak.
The voice of the chair of the Economic Committee in Parliament addressing the media there. And of course, here on 3FM 92.7, in our subsequent bulletins, we'll bring you some more reactions in relation to the happenings at the Bank of Ghana, the minorities' comments, and then the reaction from the majority as well. This is still the midday news here on 3FM 92.7. My name is Noble Crosby Annan. We're live also on all our social media platforms at 3FM 927. Let's bring you some other stories in the bulletin tonight. Minister Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam has petitioned the International Monetary Fund in a strongly worded letter on the operations of the Bank of Ghana and the losses the central bank made as captured in the 2025 financial statement. He stated that this has become necessary because there are indications that this NDC administration has missed key structural reform benchmarks under the program since it assumed office in January 2025. In his letter, the Karga lawmaker said that he had no doubt that the fund by now has assessed the direct implications of the bank's financial performance for the government's current fiscal position, future fiscal obligations, debt sustainability, and the credibility of the post-program policy framework. Here on 3FM in our subsequent bulletins, we bring you some more reactions and details from the latest letter petition by the former finance minister to the International Monetary Fund. But away from that, a candidate preparing to sit for the 2026 Basic Education Certificate examination together with his brother, they have tragically lost their lives in a road accident on the Wa-Chara Road in the Upper West region. The victims identified as Ibrahim Deni Khalid, a Basic 8 student, and Siedu Mohammed Tofik, a final year student, were all from Charia Roman Catholic Junior High School. Correspondent Ibrahim Wangara is joining us on the phone for a bit more details on this very sad story. Ibrahim, thank you for joining us. Good afternoon to you. What more do we know about this unfortunate incident?
Good afternoon. What we do know is that on Sunday, two brothers from the Chere community were using a motorbike, and according to the family, they were coming to work to buy things and at the same time to visit the center where the DEC examination was expected to take place the following day, Monday. Unfortunately, on their way, the two involved in a motor accident leading to their untimely death on the way. So these two people were identified as Ibrahim Deni Khalid, who is in Basic 8, in other words, Form 2, and then Siedu Mohammed Tawfiq, also in Basic 9, who is a candidate who was preparing or expected to participate in the ongoing basic DEC examination that is currently taking place. So the two have so far been buried in line with the Islamic custom as we speak.
I see. Very, very unfortunate there. Well, today is day 2 of the exams, and have you visited the center? And if you have, what is the development there?
Yes, I have visited the center. The Chere Basic School is scheduled to take the exams at the Islamic Girls Senior High School, specifically Center A. So at the time of my visit, they were preparing to take their first paper, that is social studies. However, and most touching is that when I entered the classroom where Mohammed Siedu Taufik was expected to have seat to participate in the exams, his chair was left empty and containing the index number 17. And according to the invigilator, that was the seat meant for the deceased. However, because of what transpired, that seat was left vacant with his colleagues preparing to take their paper. In my engagement with some of his colleagues, they are not happy with what happened because they describe him as someone calm, someone who they easily relate well with. But unfortunately, what happened, according to them, they are not happy, but there's nothing that could be done, they could be done about it.
I can imagine what his colleagues, his classmates may be going through as they watch the empty desk with index number 17. You can join us on Facebook as well, so you see what we're talking about. The desk is empty because that is what he would have sat on if he were around to write the exam. But briefly, Ibrahim, how about school authorities? Have they said anything about the development?
Yes, I made contact to the head teacher of the school and the madam that is taking care of the learners at the center. However, they declined talking to us on camera. They are hoping to only speak to us if the regional branch of the education directorate grant them that opportunity. So as it stands now, they are not commenting on the issue.
Ibrahim, I appreciate your time with us on the program. Correspondent Ibrahim Wangara joining us with some more details in relation to the unfortunate incident that happened on Sunday. Now, Roads and Highways Minister Kwame Agboja-Governors has issued his strongest warnings yet to underperforming contractors on the government's flagship Big Push infrastructure program, threatening terminations, court action, and the reallocation of contracts following a working tour of the Winchi-Boliwa Highway. The minister's tour revealed a troubling parting of slow progress, last-minute mobilization, and broken assurances across several road projects, prompting a series of sharp public rebukes directed at contractors he described as taking government jobs without the intention or capacity to deliver. My colleague Christopher Marco was with the team and is joining us for some more update. Chris, thank you for joining us. These contractors have been on the road since December last year. Tell us the state of work and the roads minister's reaction.
Yes, so across the state of the road as yesterday, according to engineers, was not the best because since December, when they took over their portions of the road that they are supposed to work on, they've not shown any signs of speeding up with work. There is no contractor on that stretch that has done even 10% of work since December, and they're supposed to use 24 months. And so the minister actually registered his displeasure. He was very angry, especially at some of the contractors, including Maripuma, who has the biggest portfolio of the contract on that road. He's indicated that within 2 months, if they've not done over 20%, he's going to abrogate the contract and give it to contractors who are ready to work. Let's take a listen to what the minister has been saying.
So when we say they beg for it, of course, if you are just 50 chosen out of 5,000, you should know that there's a lot of expectation coming from your side. So we are expecting that this contractor backs up. My brother has already said 2 months is what they have. So Chief Director, issue them the first warning letter for performing less than our expectation. I know we need to give them 2 before we terminate, but on Big Push, we are fast tracking everything. If the next time we come and they are not performing according to our schedule, we tell you to step aside. We bring somebody there. You can meet us at court. What the Ghanaian needs is that the Ghanaian, through their representatives in Parliament, have put aside money to pay for Big Push contractors. As we are saying, the government was owing contractors a huge amount of money, almost 40 billion. The president directed the finance minister, we paid 12 billion
3FM
as arrears already.
2.7.
Project he did not award. He's also paid every big push contractor which has raised work certificate. And let me say, not every big push contractor raised certificate for mobilization. Some of them have also not raised any work certificate. Indeed, if you haven't worked, what certificate are you going to raise? So at the moment, we don't have money crisis that we say that contractors are doing big push project and they are not working because they are not being paid. And if the Ghanaian hears that you have taken mobilization or you haven't raised certificate yet you are not working, then what is your use on the site?
Kwame Agbodza governs as Minister for Roads there speaking. Christopher Amwako is still on the line with me. Chris, we understand there's been some planned demonstrations or a reaction from residents in and around the area against government over the delay. What is the update on that?
Yes, so for the past 2 to 3 weeks, the youth within the Bole area, Solar area, actually the WA area have been planning series of demonstrations. Even the youth of WA have planned to close down the WA airport so that the leadership or government officials coming to WA will also use the WA stretch to know how porous the road is. But the regional ministers within these areas and other stakeholders have been able to calm them down. The Savannah regional minister has been speaking on that, and the deputy roads minister, Hassan Suini, has also been expressing concerns over that, indicating that the youth are right because of the delay, and so that is why they are going to take action on any contractor who fails to honor the obligation of meeting timelines. Let's take a listen to them.
Minister, the pace is actually very slow. It is not satisfactory. We really expect more work on the ground, and you have the freedom to do anything that you need. You don't need so much distance to be able to work on the road. The gravel is available, the materials are almost available. As and when you need it, you will definitely pile up. But we are not seeing the pace of work as we expect. And our people are actually yearning for the work too. More so when government promised them that big push is to be able to quickly do it within the time frame. And we're not seeing that. The Lot 2 has entered into Savannah. Lot 3, some work is going on. And at this time, we should be expecting not less than 10% of your work, but you are not up to. Lot 3, we're not getting up to 10%. I think we're around 4%. Lot 5, 6, and 7 is terrible. And even the road, which is actually the easy place for people to pass, if you're going, you will not be able to get easy access. It's not good at all. So we need the work to go fast.
Stakeholders who have helped to calm the agitations in this area so far. But we all recognize the fact that those agitations are not misplaced agitations at all. In fact, they have every right to be concerned the way they are concerned.
And those were the voices of some stakeholders in relation to the happenings in the region concerning the delays in execution of the big push agenda. But earlier was my colleague Christopher Amwako, who was with the team as the Minister for Roads and Highways issued warnings to underperforming contractors on government's big push infrastructure program, particularly working on the Wenchi-Bole-Wa highway. This is still the Midday News. Let's bring you some more stories this afternoon. And Parliament is expected to resume sitting on Thursday, May 21, to consider major government business, including the 2026 media budget review and the possible passage of the anti-LGBTQ bill. At an event to celebrate workers and Ghana's culture ahead of the resumption, Speaker Bagman is urging Ghanaians to embrace their heritage. My colleague Christian Yali, he has more in this report.
The Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill has regained much attention after a public hearing was held to gather stakeholder input. Speaker Bagbin, as well as other leading parliamentary figures, have at different occasions signaled their readiness to pass it when the House resumes. But apart from that, other critical issues like the mid-year budget review, which will be presented by the Finance Minister, would be at the center stage of the next meeting of Parliament. Well, there are other bills like the Interstate Succession Bill, which is to be expected, as well as the Conduct of Public Officers Bill, which has been one of a bone of contention of debate among many public experts. But again, you also have the Economic and Organized Crime Office Amendment Bill to be expected, as well as the Tribunals Bill, and a host of other legislative instruments and agreements that the House would consider once it resumes come 21st May 2026.
A report by my colleague Christian Yali there. Now, fertilizer prices on the global market are expected to rise sharply in 2026, a development that could increase food production costs and heighten food inflation risk in sub-Saharan Africa, including Ghana. This is according to the April 2026 edition of the Commodity Market Outlook released by the World Bank. And the report projects that global fertilizer prices will increase by about 30.7% in 2026 before easing in 2027 as supply conditions improve. Well, in many developing regions, especially sub-Saharan Africa, higher fertilizer costs could reduce farmers' ability to purchase adequate input, potentially affecting crop yields and food supply. We'll be keeping an eye on this development, and in our subsequent bulletins, we'll bring you some more details. But that's it for the midday news here on 3FM 92.7. Before we go, let's recap our headlines this afternoon. These are some of the stories that we brought you this afternoon on 3FM 92.7. Former Chief Executive Officer of the National Food Buffer Stock Company, ABDUL Hanan WAHAB, and his wife, FAIZA WUNI, rearrested shortly after the Attorney General withdraws all charges against them in the ongoing criminal prosecution. Also, former Finance Minister Dr. Mohammed Amin petitions the International Monetary Fund over the Bank of Ghana's 2025 registered losses, arguing that it threatens Ghana's public debt. Plus, fertilizer prices on the global market expected to rise sharply in 2026 and is likely to increase food production costs as well as inflation risk in sub-Saharan Africa. That's our package for you this afternoon. There's more news on our website, 3news.com. My name is Noble Crosby Annan. Have a great afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Business Daily on 3FM 92.7. Coming up this afternoon, Bank of Ghana defends 2025 losses, says inflation reflects policy costs behind failing inflation, stronger cedi and rising reserves. Meanwhile, the University of Professional Studies Accra's accounting dean urges the Bank of Ghana to address equity deficits and financial losses.
You satisfy or you ensure your core mandate you perform. A translation of that is what we are talking about. The bottom line today is that Bank of Ghana, in terms of or generating net negative equity, is in the red. How do we turn the whole thing?
Also this afternoon, stronger economic growth not creating jobs as industry watchers raise concern over disconnect.
The employment growth relationship is the weakest in West Africa. To create jobs on a regular basis, then transformation becomes very important.
I am Enyonam Haliga. We have details of our headlines and other stories. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us this afternoon. We'll go on to a first story now, where the Bank of Ghana is insisting its recent losses reflect the cost of stabilization policy and not financial distress or depletion of reserve. This was captured in a detailed question and answer statement to explain its 2025 financial result. There's more in the following business report. In the document, the bank explains that the operating loss was largely driven by high cost of open market operations used to control inflation, as well as expenses linked to domestic gold purchases aimed at boosting reserves. It also clarifies that losses recorded under other comprehensive income were due to the appreciation of the cedi, which reduced the local currency value of foreign asset, a purely accounting effect rather than a real loss. The bank stresses that such losses are not usual for central banks and do not affect its ability to carry out monetary policy or meet its obligations. Highlighting outcomes, the bank points to a sharp decline in inflation, a stronger cedi, increased foreign reserves, and improving credit conditions as evidence of policy success. It adds that with inflation easing and policy rate expected to normalize, the cost of its operation should reduce, while discussions on recapitalization with government remain ongoing. In the document, the bank explains that the operating loss was largely driven by high cost of open market operations used to control inflation, as well as expenses linked to domestic gold purchases aimed at boosting reserves. It also clarifies that losses recorded under other comprehensive income were due to the appreciation of the cedi, which reduced the local currency value of foreign asset, a purely accounting effect rather than a real loss. The bank stresses that such losses are not unusual for central banks and do not affect its ability to carry out monetary policy or meet its obligations. Highlighting outcomes, the bank points to a sharp decline in inflation, a stronger cedi, increased foreign reserves, and improving credit conditions as evidence of policy success. It adds that with inflation easing, the policy rate expected to normalize, the cost of its operation should reduce, while discussions on recapitalization with government remain ongoing. That was a 3 Business News Desk report on the Bank of Ghana defending 2025 losses, saying the figures reflect policy costs behind the falling inflation, stronger cedi, and rising reserves. Now, financial analyst Nelson Kujo-Kwagbeji says he is optimistic the Bank of Ghana will see a marked improvement in the financial position this year compared to the figures reported in 2025. The central bank has faced scrutiny in recent months after posting substantial losses and a sharp rise in the negative equity, which exceeded 90 billion cedis, raising concerns about financial stability. Speaking on Business Focus, Kwagbeji said progress made by the bank last year should help reduce the cost of its policy interventions, leading to a stronger balance sheet in the months ahead.
We don't expect OMO operation to cost that much this year. And so we expect the impact to be lessened this year.
And the accounting losses as well.
Then the accounting losses, is as a result, when the cedi appreciates, it has an implication on your foreign held asset. That actually in cedi terms. So that actually accounted for about 19.6 billion. But this year, looking at how the cedi is moving, even as at the end of the first quarter, I think it depreciated below even 5%, even below 4%. I think it was about 3.9.
Yeah.
And so we don't expect the cedi to do that pretty well this year, which means that the accounting loss too, may be reversed in one way or the other. And so the impact on the balance sheet this year may be lessened. So I think we may move from about 96 billion to down. However, we think that we still need finance ministry's capital injection, which is not bad, which is something that is done everywhere in order to bring them at par.
That was financial analyst Nelson Kujo-Kwagbeji there. Meanwhile, the Dean of Faculty at the Accounting at the University of Professional Studies, Accra, Professor Isaac Boadi, has stressed the need for the Bank of Ghana to improve its equity position and reduce its losses. He argues that the experience from some European central banks operating with negative equity should not be used as justification for inaction. He insisted that the bank must take steps to strengthen its financial position.
Then there's no need for us to be talking. Because you satisfy or you ensure your core mandate you perform. A translation of that is what we are talking about. The bottom line today is that Bank of Ghana, in terms of or generating net negative equity, is in red. How do you turn the whole thing? Go and do a stress test from the financial statements. Check the personnel cost. An institution that is in red recruited almost 300 and something staff within the period. Check directors' relations and check and ask so many questions. So can we sit and become unconcerned and they'll talk? So the issue is that other countries are in red. We understand. What is wrong for us to change the narrative here?
That was the Dean of Faculty for the Accounting Department at the University of Professional Studies, Accra, Professor Isaac Boadi there. Now, away from the Bank of Ghana, recent economic data reveals that Ghana's economy has achieved a robust growth rate of 6%. However, industry watchers are raising concerns that this expansion is not translating into significant increase in jobs.
Professor of Finance at the University of Ghana Business School, Godfred Bokpain, is highlighting a disconnect in the country's employment growth relationship, a trend noted as one of the weakest in West Africa. The surge in economic activity is largely attributed to the service sector, which now drives more than 50% of the nation's growth.
When we talk about the fundamentals of the economy, we are talking about development with respect to the real sector, which they track. So the question is, we've seen some kind of growth. How do we strengthen the employment growth relationship? Because the employment growth relationship is the weakest in West Africa. Ours is the weakest. Okay, and it's simply because we are targeting wholesale growth, we are not intentional. We saw growth at 6%, right? But that growth is not job rich. Because it's growth that is more than 50% driven by service sector, by ICT. Okay, so if you look at the economy broadly, the economy hasn't grown in terms of growth that will also deliver what? Jobs.
While Ghana's economy shows signs of recovery through improved inflation and positive macroeconomic indicators, the Association of Ghana Industries, AGI, is sounding the alarm on the need for long-term sustainability and meaningful job creation. The current economic structure, which has remained largely unchanged for years, is being criticized by the Chief Executive Officer of AGI, Seth Chum Akwabwa, for its inability to deliver steady employment.
The structure of the Ghanaian economy hasn't changed much for all these years. Industry, manufacturing contribution to GDP has basically remained the same around 11. It's virtually flat. But where you have higher productivity to increase job creation is in manufacturing and in agriculture. Agriculture is value addition. So we need to look at all these nuances. We are currently still exporting a lot of the raw materials. Gold has come in to help. The gold exports is helping. But as we speak now, we are not refining much. Therefore, if you are talking of sustainable jobs, to create jobs on a regular basis, then transformation becomes very important.
Industry watchers emphasize that for Ghana to achieve sustainable development, it must shift from broad growth targets to strategies that prioritize a job-rich economy.
And that brings us to the end of the Business Daily on 3FM 92.7. For more business news, please check our website at 3news.com. I am Enyonam Paliga. Enjoy the rest of your day.